in the in the short period of time, I guess, relatively speaking, that I've met Maura, my favorite thing about her, two things. First would be energy. Second would be work ethic. I'm a little old fashioned, and I feel like people's work ethics naturally are kind of on the decline. And that's why I try to coach fathers to raise disciplined kids so that they're kind of prepared for some of that stuff in the future. Maura has had wild success in real estate, but the success has come because of her actions and habits. She's a master of relationship building. My favorite thing about her, though, is she's not like your silver tongue realtor that's going to tell a client what they want to hear. She's going to tell them the right thing. That may not be what they want to hear, but how she does it, I think, is really professional and crafty. So enough flattery of Maura. The first part of it is like, hey, we all have a story. I believe that everybody's story is actually pretty important. I also believe that there is a junior version of Maura out there right now that hearing this story is going to kind of be like, man, similar. Hey, if Maura can do it, I can do it, right? So where are you from? Where'd you go to high school? Where'd you go to college? A little bit about your family, any other jobs you've had, and then I'll ask you a couple other questions as we go along.
Okay. And y'all feel free to like chime in, or if you have questions or contributions or ideas, like I love to hear them. I think collaboration is one of the best things for our business. So I would love to hear your thoughts too. But a little bit about myself. So I was born and raised in Hanover. I am the youngest of 4 kids. So both my dad was a shop teacher and my mom was an occupational therapist. I have 3 older brothers. Kevin is one of them. A lot of you guys know him. He's awesome. I also have an older brother, Patrick, who's technically number 1 in the lineup. Kevin's number 2. Ryan is number 3, and then I'm number 4. So I'm super close to my siblings. I absolutely love them. It was definitely not that way growing up. If you guys want blackmail on Kevin, since he's not on this call, like, let me know. I'm sure we can dig up some good baby pictures or something. But anyway, yeah, so big family person. I went to school at Hanover, graduated from there, went to school at JMU. When I went to school at JMU, I originally went in for physical therapy. I am a very social person. I'm good with like my people skills, but as far as like my math and reading and science and like memory as a whole, not really my gig. So when I learned you have to have like a 4.0 to get into grad school for PT, I was like, probably not going to be me. So I switched to sport and recreation management, which is a much more people focused major, kind of like a slacker major, but I absolutely loved it and thrived in it. So when I did that, I started working in sports communication. Again, I realized I don't really like reading and writing, so that wasn't my alley. And then I switched to sports sponsorships, and I loved that because it was very people oriented. It was business oriented. I just really enjoyed it. So what started out as an internship turned into a full-time job my senior year. So I actually cut back on my classes and worked full-time while finishing my degree. And then once that happened, I stayed at JMU for about another year or so after I graduated, still working in sports sponsorship. Loved it, but was going through some like quarter life crisis stuff, like broke up with a college boyfriend, like was still in a college town. So in that like awkward phase of I'm a young professional who likes to have fun, but still young. So anyway, I was like, all right, I want to change. And I really wanted to come back to Richmond. So one of my professors, I got together with her and I said, hey, I need help. Like I'm like struggling big time right now. I just don't know what I want to do, where I want to be. And she's like, you got to get back to your roots, what matters to you. And ultimately, like a big part of my undergrad study was youth sports. And so she was like, let me introduce you to someone from Special Olympics, go down, volunteer for an event, see what you think. So I did, went down, volunteered, didn't really think that much of it, thought it was a really cool experience. But the girl called me like a month or 2 later and said, hey, we have a job opening in Virginia Beach. I know you want to be in Richmond, but you know, would you consider it? And I was like, yeah, sure. Tossed my hat in the ring, didn't really hear anything. And then I got a call a week later that was like, hey, we actually hired for the person in Virginia Beach, but we want to hire you in Richmond. And I was like, oh my gosh, get out. So I ended up getting on Special Olympics staff as their like events planner. So I planned all of our state championships, which was like a dream job. I absolutely loved it. Then during the pandemic, that kind of shift. We weren't doing events, but we were focused on a lot on like online fitness, come up with some really cool programs. But at the end of the day, like I just wasn't really making money, which if you've ever worked in nonprofits, and I think everyone should work in nonprofits at some point in their life, you know, you don't really make money. So I was talking to Kevin about this and I was like, that, and there was a couple other things too, but I was like, man, I just don't know what I want to do. And this was when everything was getting crazy in real estate. And he was like, come work with me. You'd love it. You'd be great at it. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I started kind of planning a strategic exit from Special Olympics, studying for my real estate test, and then took my test, passed, and put in my 2 weeks notice. So that's how I ended up in real estate. So obviously I have Kevin to thank for that. But yeah, that's kind of my background and how I got here.
I love it. Why, I guess besides the obvious with you, did you join Hometown more or less because Hometown, Hanover, Kevin, all that good stuff? Or was there any, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think real estate was honestly ever on my radar prior to this conversation with Kevin. And I mean, Kevin's an awesome recruiter and can kind of talk anyone into, I think, getting excited about real estate. But yeah, I truly don't think I would have done it if he hadn't pushed me to do it. So I'm glad he did. Best decision I ever made.
So that it's so wild for me to hear. And again, like, that's why I'm glad we learned this stuff, because like, I feel like you're a natural realtor, but looking at how you serve the community and the things that you did in terms of client appreciation, planning, events and stuff, it's like, hey, that's a large part of kind of how we run our businesses anyway. The fact that you're so good with people, it's wild to hear me say that, like, hey, I never even really thought about being a realtor until Kevin, who has talked me into a lot of stuff too.
Yeah.
I'm proud of, but like kind of ropes you in, and now you're a natural, you know, like that in itself, in my opinion, is an amazing story. Also, I think it's important to reference two things. First is that, like, I try not to use the pandemic as a crutch, or however you want to say that, whatever. But it really did change things. It changed a lot of the framework for businesses. And because it took a lot of that voice to voice, face to face interaction out, I think that's a big part that changed for people, where they decided to go do something else. It's like, hey, this actually isn't the same job anymore. And in your case, Maura, I like the fact that you mentioned money. I know maybe it's shallow to talk about money or whatever, but yeah. Dean Cheatham, probably like my first couple of years at Hometown, he said, hey, look, you're going to hear this phrase that money can't buy happiness. And he said, Larry, I'll tell you, it can't, but it sure as hell can prevent a lot of unhappiness. And because of that, it's important, right? A certain amount of it is important. I think more might not make you happy, but leaving a job because you're not financially where you want to be, I think it's a power move, right? It's okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it was, don't get me wrong, scary as all heck, right? But I also realized that I was in a position, I'm also very important part of this conversation. I'm not married and I don't have kids. So as far as like home responsibilities, I didn't really have any. I still don't really have any. So it made that jump a lot easier, knowing I don't have a family to provide for. Like, if this is the time you're going to switch and get out of an industry and into a new one, like was my time of life to do it.
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
Well, you're familiar with boys, so Maura, if you ever want the feeling of having a couple kids, I've got a 9 and almost 6-year-old. I short-term or long-term loan them out.
That's sweet.
Labor and stuff like that.
That's nice.
Tell me a little bit about I know all of this stuff, but let's keep in mind, as if nobody else knew this stuff, what office are you out of? What team are you with? And what do you like about that?
Yeah, I am out of Twin Hickory and I am on the RLT/TSG, and I absolutely love it. I think a lot of people are like, oh, your brother got into this, and he's a massive part of my story. Please don't get me wrong. But I am so incredibly grateful to be on the team that I'm on. The people are great. You're constantly pushed to be better, and you're always surrounded by support. And it just is so exciting. It's truly like a team that I feel like I can flourish on, and I absolutely love. And it's just such a big part of why I do what I do and why I am good at it, but have a lot of room for improvement too.
Sure. I don't think that it takes away especially new realtors, I think they struggle with teams and how they feel about not standing alone, if that makes sense. But a team is it's someone to hold you up, push you a little further, give you a back rub or a high five, right? Like, and also somebody to normalize the parts of this business when you start filling in the blanks in your head, you know. And so I know it's hit or miss with teams these days because of what you quote unquote maybe give up. But I think for the right person, a team atmosphere can take their business to heights that it would never reach otherwise. You know, like
I completely
Leanne's
agree.
on a team and she also smashes it in real estate. Same thing, Harry, me, you, it's definitely a formula that works depending on the person that you're talking about. So Maura, what's one thing that you try to do every day without fail to be successful as a real estate business owner?
I can give you the answer that my team leader would probably like to hear me say, or I can give you my real answer. And I, to be completely honest, I mean, I am not nearly as consistent as I'd like to be. Like, don't get me wrong, I am in the office just about every single day. And I'd say that's probably like a very basic thing. The rest of my day could be a disaster, but like it is few and far between where you don't see me at Twin Hickory at some point in the day. So that's my, I'd say, biggest thing. I mean, obviously there are things that I should do, like qualify people and make calls and, you know, get face to face in, but anyway, Skylar knows. Skylar's in mechanics all the time.
With Skylar and Scalar's forehead.
Yeah.
Lethal combination.
Guys are on mute.
So right, yeah. Honestly, Maura, I feel like you kind of downplayed that a little bit. Every single successful realtor I know spends a certain amount of time at the office. I might be wrong. Tell me who the person is. I know very few people that are never at the office that are top producers at any firm. If there is somebody, I believe that person probably has a satellite office somewhere or someplace where they really do work. So one thing to do every day could be to go to the office because
Yeah, absolutely.
nothing bad is going to come from that. Even if you don't have the most productive day ever, you spend a little time around the water cooler and all that, like you're still going to be in a professional environment surrounded by professionals doing professional acts. So that in itself, I think, strong. What's one lesson you've learned in real estate so far, more of the hard way?
Gosh, Larry, you gave me these questions in advance and I looked at them and I thought about it and now I'm like, oh wait, I don't know. For every really simple deal, there's probably going to be one really complicated deal. And you're always learning something new. Like just being able to accept help, ask for help, and have resources to do so is such a massive part of the business. So yeah, I had a super complicated deal. And if you know me and we talked at any point last year, this probably came up in conversation because it was absolutely bonkers and difficult and so hard and big personalities like across the board. And it tested me so much. And I was working with two other agents on the other side that have been in the real estate business for 30 plus years and said that this was the worst real estate deal they've ever done. So I was like, okay, well, that makes me feel better. And hopefully it's the worst one I ever do. But it was very difficult and very challenging. But if I didn't have the support system and resources that I had, I would have been just up the creek.
The right perspective is like, hey, you know, I hate to use the word turd, but I do think I used it every single Truth on Thursday. Like, nobody wants to eat a turd. Like, I don't think it's on anybody's diet or plate or preferred menu. But if somebody's like, hey, Larry, you are going to have to eat this turd. I'm like, hey, give it to me then. Let me get it over with. Versus like knowing there's a turd waiting out there for me to eat. It tastes like crap either way. So eat the thing and get it down and go brush your teeth. I don't know.
I feel like your 6-year-old sound like so immature every time you said turd. I like giggled uncomfortably.
I get most of my advice from my kids. I don't give them very much. So I try to incorporate that as much as I can. One thing I wrote down though is that hard deals do seem to follow easy deals. That is a weird trend where like in real estate, if you feel like you're on easy street for too long, a hard one's coming. That's why we train. That's why we synergize. That's why we have teams and stuff like that. Like you said, that's why even if it's hard, asking for help is never a bad thing. Just choose wisely who you ask.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's flip the script there. All right, that's the hard stuff. What's the funniest or craziest thing that's happened to you in real estate so far? This is my favorite question of the whole segment.
Honestly, I don't know if this is like funny or crazy, but this happened to me last week and I was like, holy smokes, I don't know if this will ever happen to me again. But basically, we were going through this house and beautiful house, absolutely gorgeous. Clients loved it. As it was a rainy day, so we took off our shoes and we got into the front door. As we were like sitting by the front door, the wife is putting on her shoes and she looks over at like a column and sees that it's rusting like on the edge where I forget what those little metal pieces are called on the corners of walls to protect them from like dings and dents. Do you know what I'm talking about? The
Yeah,
little brackets.
yeah.
So she was like, well, that's weird. Why is like the corner of this wall rusted? And so she like starts to really like look into this. And I was like, put on your shoes, like, let's go. And she's like, oh my God, these columns are covered in like dog and cat pee. And I was like, wait, what? So sure enough, she like goes to the bathroom, gets a piece of toilet paper and like wipes the column and it is like yellow. And I was like, that is disgusting. And she's like, well, we can't buy this house now because our dogs are going to come and like pee all over where these dogs mark their territory. So I was like, that's gross, but kind of funny at the same time. So, and that not necessarily funny, but just a recent experience. And I was like,
It is
you learn
wild.
something new every day.
So everybody here, you ever go into somebody's house for a listing presentation and they're so apologetic about the condition of their house and you're like, ma'am, sir, I don't know how to tell you this. Maybe it's not clean by your standards, but you have no idea what I've seen out there. Like I remember showing it was a vacant house. I think the people had been maybe removed from the house and there was not much in terms of like drug paraphernalia in there that anybody hadn't seen before. It was so wild to go in and see how people lived like that. Obviously, clients don't buy that house, but you're like, if I go into a house that needs a little bit of decluttering and TLC versus a house that has cat and dog pee and hair caked on the walls, we're talking two different standards here. Hopefully that's the craziest thing that ever happens to you, Maura.
Yeah, I know. That was just like a recent one, but I was like, gosh, that's people are wild.
Full disclosure, most of our stories have involved people that had limited amounts of clothes on that should not have been there. And
I haven't run into any like strippers or naked people. Dan, have you? I did have, well, not really funny. Never mind. But Dan, I want to hear about your story too.
Magic Mike showing one time. It was the Magic Mike Volume 4.
That sounds kind of fun.
All right. So kind of getting more towards wrapping up, I ask everybody each week, and this is kind of it's in the course of a week, and every answer is different. So there's no right or wrong answer here. But how many hours weekly do you think that a full-time agent should put in? And what are the 3 best things that agent could do with those hours?
I mean, I don't really think there's like a time on it, but if you're a full-time agent, I mean, you should treat it like a full-time job, right? And like that's gonna look different for everyone. But I mean, yeah, I would fully expect like 40 hours. Now I understand that like our hours are split up between showings and listing appointments and biz chats and office hours and admin stuff. But so is every other job. And our job, if you want to be successful, I'm like, you got to be willing to put in the work. So I'm like, yeah, you should absolutely expect to spend 40 plus hours. But I also realize that it takes me a lot longer to get stuff done than other people. Like some people can just sit down and like crank stuff out. For me, my brain doesn't work like that. So it often takes a little bit longer. But like if you're productive, then good for you. Like I don't think there needs to be an hour time limit on it. But I think you should treat it like a full-time job. And then 3 best things an agent can do in those hours. I think this completely depends on people's styles, right? Like, I had lunch with an agent the other day and he was just asking, like, brainstorm, like, what are you doing? And I was like, all right, like, probably the same thing that you're doing, man. But like, everyone has a superpower, we call them, right? And so it's like, okay, well, what's your superpower and how can you like utilize that best in your business? So like, for me, mine's my energy, and like, you can pick up on my energy in a phone call, but you can really pick it up in like face to face and person to person. So I spend a lot of my week knocking out like Popeyes probably isn't the right word, but like appointments, like coffee appointments, or like let's go grab a beer or lunch or something like that, or go on a walk. I'm a big walk girl. I go on walks like every morning, whether that's with clients, it's with friends, it's something, but it's an easy, free excuse to get in front of people. And walks are just like a good way to have sometimes deep conversations and really get to know people. Like, you can do it over breaking bread, but like, you get people walking, they get talking. I'm like, okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, simply talking to people is the best thing that you can do. And I would say utilizing your superpower, whatever that might be, whether that's supporting people, educating people, spending time with people, just showing them that you care, like whatever that looks like for you. Use your superpower every day, and I promise you're going to be successful. And then I'm sure everyone says this, but calls. You got to make calls. I hate making calls, but you got to do it. And that's what really turns your business around.
I don't, 15 years into this, more, I still don't particularly like making phone calls either. Like, you might be similar. I found that I have no fear or apprehension about calling with a purpose. I can call to serve, I can call to advertise, I can call to do a number of different things, and I can satisfy the real estate side of it if I say the right things, right? But I think that the biggest things is that there's no substitute for voice to voice and face to face interaction. There just isn't. We try to create them, and they are sometimes adequate substitutes sometimes, but they never replace the original recipe, which is, hey, I'm walking and talking with people, I'm calling and talking with people, I'm getting in front of people so I can kind of feel their body language. I can see them instead of just hearing them on the phone and stuff. I think that's where face to face is just as important, if not more, than that voice to voice. But I wrote a 3-step process down that I feel like Maura just described. First, identify your superpower, right? Everybody has this. None of it looks the same. I think mine is, I grew up poor. I grew up in a serving family, in a serving role. We were more chores and duties than fun stuff, unfortunately. But it put me in a frame of mind of serving others early. And I think being poor with a servant's mentality, those two things are responsible for everything or whatever things me and my family have now. So your superpower might be, it might be ugly. You might not think it's as sexy as you want it to be, but you can't deny that the actual power it can have. So first, identify your superpower. Second, figure out how to use it consistently in your business. And third, make sure you're catering apps around voice to voice and face to face interactions. I think that's really strong advice, Maura. I appreciate that.
That was so much more eloquent than the way I said it, Larry. You're so good.
You give me the words, lady. I try to do something cool with them.
That was awesome. I loved that.
Okay, so we're right on schedule, right at 30 minutes more. Thank you. Is there anything, any message, any one-liner, anything that you heard that helped you that you want to leave these cats with before we go try to sell something?
One thing that I have kind of lived by since I was probably in middle school is a quote. I don't know where I saw it, but it's hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And I think that we are in an industry that has very talented people, but hard work will beat everyone. Like if you just use that, like you'll get after it, you're going to be successful.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go work hard, Maura. Let's go work hard.
All right, everyone make calls.
See you, Jake. Let's go. Y'all saw something. Thank y'all for being with us today. Maura,
Thanks, y'all.
so much. Amazing. See y'all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Logan.